the studio after an absence last week for, I believe, vacation, right? Mayor John Mitchell is with us. Hey, another nice shirt. I like that shirt.
Thank you for noticing, and yours as well, Barry.
Thank you very much. Yeah,
those are pineapples.
Pineapples,
like,
and
looks delicious.
I haven't worn this shirt like all season. I don't think I have anyway.
This
is a real old one, so I said, well, I got to break this one out before I got to put it in the closet.
I was thinking the same thing with my shirt. It's kind of green and yellow, and I asked my daughter, Natalie, what do you think of this shirt? She said, looks like Easter to me. Well, I got it on, so I'm
you can wear it for Easter, too.
Yeah,
well, it's long sleeves. You can wear that for a while.
You know what? Look at this, Barry. I came in here with a sport jacket on. I'm thinking, this is radio. Why do I have to do this?
I know it's like hot. 95 degrees out there, too.
It's hot out there, yeah.
Very hot, yeah.
I went for a run this morning, and I just didn't stop tripping.
Yeah. Yeah, I did my walk last night, but I waited for it to start to get dark a little bit before I did
that would have been a better time for me to run. Yeah,
so I'll probably do that again tonight. So we got unhealthful air out there, I guess.
Yeah, so it is all joking aside. It's just worth reminding not only seniors but people who are looking out for seniors, children, and such that people can avail themselves of cooler places around the city. Libraries, senior centers, they have air conditioning.
Your office is there.
Come by City Hall. Yeah, City Hall.
Bring some nice coffee, hang out. Pumpkin spice is back.
If you're too hot, you come on down. But no, I mean it's there were public spaces available, and when it's this hot, and it's not going to stay this hot for too long. But look, if you need to get out, come on over to one of our city spaces and chill out, literally.
Yeah, it is. The long-range forecast is that it's going to remain above normal temperatures for the fall. We're supposed to have a beautiful fall around these parts.
Yeah, remember the summer started off pretty lousy, and
it did.
Turned into
so we're making it up at the end. Yeah. So I'll take that any day.
Me too.
But they're also saying
I'll take that over SNOW.
Yeah, well, I was going to say they're also saying it's supposed to be a miserable winter. So.
Well, they always say that, Barry. Yeah. Whoever they are.
They. Who the heck are they anyway, right? And why do they get to say things that we don't get to say? So let's start on a more serious note. Passing this morning, I guess this morning, at least we learned of it this morning, of Loretta Bork down on the South End.
Yeah. So I will miss her. I was... I had a very strong connection to Loretta. She's, I just thought the world of her. She was very talented. She was a very quick study. She was very exacting in her the way she thought. Very intelligent, but she was just so passionate about making sure that the people in her neighborhood got what they deserved. And she grew up on one of the streets from along Ruth Street, I think Ashley Street, in a tenement neighborhood, and she was determined to make sure that her neighborhood got its due, and she did that for over 50 years. And even in a late age, she was still doing some pretty amazing things. You'd go to her neighborhood group meetings, the Cove Street neighborhood meetings, and she would, she'd see her. I issued a statement today that I likened her work in those meetings like an experienced trial attorney. She was always prepared, always was very well informed, and then would have public officials, and myself included, and we would be expected to have answers. But she wasn't a complainer. And as I heard the broadcast coming over here, I think Taylor aptly put it, is she organized a lot of stuff. And in a day and age in which participation in community events and groups is in general decline. All across America, she was able to pull people together. So if you ever go to her Christmas tree lighting every year, there will be lots and lots of kids there and lots of support, lots of people, a third of her age going there because of Loretta. And it was an event where, there were lots of kids who had real needs and who were likely to get too much for Christmas, who had an opportunity there to go see Santa and enjoy being out as part of a broader party. and they got gifts, which is needed gifts, clothing and things. So, and it was just a great way to give back to the community and bring people together in ways you really don't see anymore, Barry. I hate to sound cynical.
My wife always, this morning said she always remembers Loretta for her Halloween parties. And
then there's the Halloween party, right? So just think about, and it might sound quaint and old school these days, but it still happens. Going on, I think it was either 46 or 48 years, the last one. That Loretta started it back in, I guess, around 1970 or so, 68, and it involves kids who march from Hazelwood down to Clegg Field, and they parade around the field in their costumes, and they're given awards in different categories, and it's just a fabulous event, the likes of which you don't see, especially in cities these days anymore, and it's because she insisted on it. So here's a woman, she died at 98, who hadn't lost her fastball at all. And, in the last few years, I put her on a lot of stuff. The building committee for the new Jacob School, the building committee for the new public safety center in the South End. I put her on those building committees. I put her on the 4 or 5 people that I had to hire the new police chief, and people asked me, you're putting this 95-year-old woman on to pick the next police chief. I said, you're absolutely right. I said that she is sharp. She knows exactly what the police, the department's needs are. She understands the organization. She understands the neighborhood, and she gets it. I really want to hear what she has to say. So I just thought the world of her, and I'll miss her a lot. And the trick now is to see whether others can step into the void. The neighborhood she represented most around Cove and Ruth Street, really does need somebody to lead it. And it becomes a lot harder these days. There are lots of folks out there who volunteer for neighborhood groups. Our neighborhood group leaders do terrific work, and don't get paid a dime for it, don't get their names in the paper. They do it because they love the place and they step up. And we just need to continue to cultivate that kind of spirit that Loretta exhibited for over a half century.
Absolutely.
So if I'm going on about her, it's a reason. I felt very strongly about her.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about her before. In fact, I believe she's even called in a couple of times
I'm sure
during the program. Yeah, over the course of the time that we've been doing this. First formal day back to school tomorrow.
Yes.
Some schools have been on already.
Some are back already. So in the district, you have Parker, Haymack, and Gomes that have been back since last week, and the charters have been back, and the Catholic schools have been back, and now Voctech and the rest of the district will be back tomorrow. So it doesn't feel like at the end of the summer, but it is. And in the district, we got off to a good start Monday with Superintendent Anderson's presentation to the faculty, which I thought went really well. It was an opportunity for him to introduce himself to the teachers and the administrators there, to highlight the work ahead and to really set the tone going forward. I thought he just did a fabulous job, and he made clear that taking the school district to the proverbial next level will take a lot of teamwork, a lot of participation, and there's an expectation on teachers that to speak up and let your voice be heard. We really want to encourage that, and he does, and and as they will see over time, he really means it. But it was just the right foot to start off on. So I was really impressed with his presentation. I think the folks in attendance were as well.
Number of schools in Massachusetts and throughout the area have canceled classes because of the excessive heat. Have we canceled anything, or do we have any plans to cancel anything?
They are keeping an eye on it. And I remember only in Massachusetts, at least certainly in New Bedford, only the newest schools have functioning air conditioning, right? So just keep that in mind. I mean, guys like you and me, Barry, would probably say, I don't have the inclination. Look, my kids, so my 2 oldest girls, play sports at New Bedford High School, and I got a call yesterday to pick up Natalie from field hockey because it reached a certain heat index, right? And I'm not criticizing that. It's just, but I think, and the folks running the athletic department, Tom Tarpey and the group, do a great job. But they're under obligations now that athletic departments weren't under years ago, which is, the threat of lawsuit, the threat of other things, of other ramifications if some kid drops from heat stroke or whatever. And you see that stuff happen from time to time. Where was it? The University of Maryland.
You're not going to drop a math stroke, though. I mean, you can sit in when I was a kid, you know how old I am? I went to the Clark Street School. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that's freaking old, Mayor. I mean,
still standing. It's catching traps now.
Or me or the school?
Well, both.
Okay.
You look like you're seated right now.
But I spent most of my elementary education over at the old Lincoln School.
Yeah.
The one that used to be there. And you know what we're doing a day like today? You'd shut the lights out and you'd open all the windows. Yeah. And that was it. You pull the shades down if they had shades.
But don't you can't cast blame at the district for doing it. This is, I think we have these conversations around snow days as well, right? So, there's an inclination for, let's not say older generations, but, parents to say, back in my day, things we sucked it up and we drove on. But, there were other considerations these days, including the threat of litigation, which unfortunately exist, and schools have to deal with that. But I think there is some correcting to be done. I mean, I can remember playing high school football on hot days like this in double sessions, and you wouldn't be allowed to take your helmet off or drink water, which is a little too much.
Well, right? That's a little excessive.
When I was in Army basic training, it wasn't even that. Yeah. It wasn't even that hard, right? So there was probably some correcting that had to be done to acknowledge the fact that there are some people who are susceptible to heat stroke.
So you got 92 degrees and the kids are in a nice, comfortable building with the windows open and the lights out, and you say, nope, too hot for you in here. Go outside and play instead, right? Go out and run around in the heat, and no liability there, though, right?
Yeah, you have to be sensitive. It's always, I don't know.
Sensitive. We're too sensitive. Toughen up.
Yeah, I know, but there's some people there are some people who are more susceptible than others to heat stroke. And that's why we talked at the outset about making sure seniors avail themselves of opportunities.
We're talking about senior citizens, not seniors in high school.
Yeah. Yeah.
So no early release or anything like that. I know some of the districts are doing.
Some of them did. Yeah, some of them did. So they haven't made any decisions. The superintendent's going around to different schools to check out just how hot for himself, just how hot it is in those classrooms.
Ooh, it's hot. Yeah.
And look, it's not going to last for too long.
It's supposed to wrap up tomorrow. Yeah. So I went to the store to get something, some sunscreen, and I walked in the store and Happy Halloween. In August, right? Winter coats.
You're always jumping the gun.
Halloween candy. Halloween candy's actually been out for a couple of weeks.
Christmas decorations.
Right over here, Dollar Tree.
No kidding.
Stop on your way home. You can get Christmas decorations. You can start early this year instead of waiting for Christmas Eve.
I usually, for the decorations, wait till December 26th.
When they're on sale. That's the smart thing to do. Yeah. But yeah, the Christmas decorations are out. They've got over Dollar Tree.
We have in my house. I've been getting a lot of grief from Annie and now my staff that we don't have any air conditioning in my house. I don't have like a window unit or anything.
Really? Nothing? No.
See, that's the reaction. Wow. I've been getting. Really? You don't have any air? What's wrong with you?
I know, but you can afford it. It's not like
I can afford it, but I'm waiting for the sales, Barry. September. That's when the air conditioners go on sale.
Yeah, we'll make you some little paper fans that you can sit around and. But you didn't have it last year either, right? And you didn't go out the day. No.
We have fans.
All right, so back to school. What are your objectives for the coming school year? What do you?
Yeah, so there are a number of them. First and foremost is to get our superintendent well situated so he can continue to do those things that have been going well, the reforms that are taking root and that make a lot of sense, and for him to assess those things that might not make sense and should be changed, and getting feedback from teachers and administrators about how they can be improved. There's a careful balancing of any leader of an organization that is seeking to improve itself between ensuring that there's a clear vision and a clear set of expectations and accountability that goes along with it, without everybody's feeling so pressured that they just comply, right? And what I said to the teachers in my remarks at the convocation on Monday is that, we're marking a transition point here in many respects. But to my mind, what's most important is the notion that we're going from compliance mode, right? This place where, you know, the state has pressured us to do X, Y, and Z to improve matters, and I think that was appropriate a few years ago. But now we've got to fly the plane on our own, right? And so we have to be in the business of pulling ourselves together, of building something new, building a culture, building a brand for New Bedford Public Schools that will be sustainable and enduring, and that takes a lot of work. I mean, the school system, as we've discussed countless times, hit a real low a few years ago, and building it back up requires a great deal of effort, requires resources too, and that's why we talk about charter schools and other threats to the budget as well. It's going to take money. So these are things that you know, that I'd like to see. You know, we're putting him, Mr. Anderson, in a position to make those assessments, as we should. The school committee is not in the business of managing the school department. It's a board of directors to which the superintendent answers to, and we set the overall policy, and he executes on it, but he does that using his expertise, and we give him room to make those decisions. There are some immediate, you know, near-term things that we're doing. There are some facilities improvements that people will start to see across the district. You know, things that are really conspicuous, like if you drive by the Parker School, it looks totally different. New windows, new doors, new asphalt. The playground we just built a year ago, it just looks like a really, really good place. You know, there were more of those projects. That's the fifth of those types of projects that we've done on our school buildings. There were more in the pipeline. You know, around the high school, redoing the fields along Parker Street. They look like a mess for a long time with rusty fences and storage containers and things. We're getting rid of all that. That's going to look, I'd like to see it look more like a college campus. It should be inviting. Things like the auditorium at the high school, locker rooms at the high school, work on the library, work across the district at every school, just to make our schools look sharp, as they should be. They're important places, and they should look sharp.
What's the life expectancy of the high school? I know that was built right around the same time Durfee and Fall River was, and Durfee's already you know, collapsing, and they got to build a new school there.
Yeah, so New Bedford High is about 40 years old, a little more, and it doesn't have the same structural issues as Durfee for whatever reason. I don't know why Durfee is
a lot of it was just really lack of upkeep. Shape. They never took care of it.
Yeah, I can't say so. We can't claim in New Bedford that the upkeep has been as well funded as it should be, as it should have been over the years. But when we're correcting that, but you know, I mean, obviously, where it was built was itself a problem right on the Parker Street Waste side. We've continued to deal with that issue, although that is winding down. There are needs at the high school, you know, a lot of which we've addressed in the last few years. Athletic facilities, for sure, as we've seen, but you know, things like some new science labs. We put money into that. We've wired the whole place for broadband. That was a $5 million project a couple of years ago, and you know, now the other work that's ongoing now that I just mentioned a moment ago. So, you know, I think I don't foresee the high school moving to another spot. I foresee maybe in the next few years doing something like a big window and door and other upgrade project that's not dissimilar from what we've seen in some of the larger elementary schools like Gomes and Hayden McFadden and Kearney. So, so I think that's what's in store. It's in a good place. It's well situated. It's a good building. And we've put a fair amount of money into it in the last few years, so it's you know, I think it does overall fulfill the need to support the academic mission.
So it's still in pretty good physical shape. Yeah. Any other schools reaching the end? I know we've been replacing, you know, as we can going along. Any other?
So all the middle schools are fairly new, as you know. They're all under 20 years old, right? So they're in good shape. The elementary schools, you know, most of them are old. It's an old stock of elementary schools. It turns out that the real old ones, the ones that were built around the time of Clark and the original Lincoln, are still solid buildings. They built them really well back then.
Not the Lincoln. That Lincoln's gone.
Well, Lincoln's gone, right? But
not in very good shape anymore. The new one is.
The new one is. So,
and Ashley School was built around the same time.
Oh, actually, yeah,
appears to be in pretty good shape.
So, Winslow and Swift and, what else? What am I forgetting? Carlos Pacheco. I mean, those schools of that vintage that are roughly 100 years old, they're probably not going to be replaced anytime soon because it costs a lot of money to build new schools. So we finished the Jacob School last year. That was $36 million. And that basically absorbed Hayden McFadden and a little bit of the Taylor School. But that was $36 million. If we start, the construction costs are such now in New England that to build that again, if we started today, it would probably be a $50 million school.
And that's with the state match?
Because of, with the state match. So our match would be roughly 20% of that, so about $10 million, right? But still a lot of money, and so we'll continue to look at those as time goes on. I think there's some debate about which one's next. I mean, we've focused a little bit, I think, on I'll just say that. I mean, I'll just say that on Congdon and Duval's in the south end, and thinking about some sort of combined arrangement there. But that's at least a few years out. So we're putting more money into some of those older schools, the ones that we think still have decades more of life in them, and where we think we need to replace them, we'll go ahead and replace. But it's not an overnight exercise. It takes some time, and as I said, it's getting more expensive all the time.
All right, let me take a break. 508-996-0500. We've got somebody that's been hanging on since we went on the air, and lines are open. If you have any questions for the mayor, got a bunch of other stuff to talk about. Have you had a guest shot in the movie yet? Have you been?
They came in. The folks came in to brainstorm some sites with me. They told me a little bit about the narrative of the film. It's called Jungle Land, and I suggested some stuff, places where they might go and shoot. And it was an interesting exchange.
I'm not sure that's a very flattering name for a movie. Shot in Fall River, New Bedford, Taunton.
It's set mostly in New Bedford, and we'll see what happens. So I know the last two mayors of Albuquerque, right? I don't know if did you ever watch Breaking Bad?
My wife did. No,
it's such a, you should watch it. You should binge watch it. I just think it's fabulous. But it's it's not exactly flattering of Albuquerque, right? Because it's about a high school chemistry teacher who becomes a drug kingpin, right? And so it's really violent, and so I've said to both of those mayors, Marty Chavez and R.J. Berry, one a Democrat, one a Republican, they're both there while it was being shot, and I said, hey, what did it do for Albuquerque in terms of its reputation, right? And they were both like, the two of them hate one another too, because one beat the other one, but they both said no, it was actually good for the city. It was a good economic stimulus. Every show injected about $1 million into the local economy. So over 60 something shows, that's a lot of money. But they said, people, it made it feel like it was a little more of a novel place than it had been. Right? It just seemed a little more edgy, a little more interesting and people from the outside paid more attention to Albuquerque than they had before. So, you can't control these things too much. But I'd like to see, the Sound of Music too.
Yeah, right.
Shot into, right. It's something
Maria
light, right? But
hey, Maria.
But you can't pick and choose these things.
I can see where that can happen. And my wife's a TV head. I'm not a TV head. Red Sox are on. I watch the Red Sox. Otherwise, I read. I'm not much of a TV guy at all. So, but she was a huge fan of Sopranos.
Yeah.
Okay. She just binge watched that and watched all of the episodes like 15 times each. So we were on vacation in New Jersey this summer, and we had to go to every single community and every single landmark where the Sopranos was shot. Including a restaurant in, don't even ask me the name of it now. I can't recall the name of it. Did you watch this show, John? John's shaking his head, yeah. There was a famous restaurant where the big guy gutted at the end of the series. Okay, well, we had to go, Hallstrom, I think it was called. We had to go there for lunch. And
well, that happened. So in the case of Breaking Bad in Albuquerque, the mayors both said, I mean, for folks who've watched that show, they'll recognize this. The main characters owned a car wash at one point in the story, and they said both mayors said, people go to this car wash just to have their picture taken.
Just
they don't bother to have their car washed. They just stand in front and have their picture taken.
Yeah. Well, Bada Bing is the strip club that I guess Soprano owns, so we had to go there too. We didn't go in for full disclosure.
You were dragged in kicking and screaming.
But we had to check it. Yeah. It was research. I swear, it was research. Let me take a break. We're going to come right back with the mayor. 508-996-0500. Stay with us. All right, 12:38 on this very, very hot Wednesday afternoon. Let's grab a call for the mayor because this person has been waiting online for a long, long time. So let's get that call in, and then we've got some other topics to talk about as well. And thanks for hanging on for so long. You're next on WBSM.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm just calling about what I feel is a problem in the schools of New Bedford and surrounding areas, and where it's been so hot, how there has been surrounding areas that let their children leave early, and the surrounding areas today that actually called off school because of the heat index, because of the weather. Yesterday was pretty bad, and today is supposed to be even worse. And I heard New Bedford is not even on that list to even do an early release. And the other problem that I have is, why don't these schools have air conditioning? These kids cannot be tentative. They cannot pay attention. Just think of how you would feel if you had to work in this all day long with no relief.
He lives in it. He doesn't have an air conditioner.
You should answer that question, Barry.
Well,
as I said, I don't know if you were listening before, but
I was listening to the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So, with the exception of 3 of the 26 schools we have, New Bedford hasn't started yet. So, and the superintendent's been to those 3 schools to check it specifically in person, and he has determined that it's okay. I mean, these things vary by school to school, like any other building you're in. I mean, no two of those are exactly the same. Some get hotter in hot weather than others. Some are better ventilated than others.
Of the 3 that are open, do they have air conditioning?
I don't believe so. So the answer to your question about why the schools aren't air conditioned is that most of the schools were built a long time ago before anybody even thought of putting air conditioning in them. So some of our schools, the newer ones, do have air conditioning. Most don't.
Mm-hmm. Well, I also received a report yesterday that children were vomiting and passing out in Hayden McFadden School because of the heat. And then also, I just want to, let you know.
Who was that reported? Where did
he hear that from?
It was text to a family member from somebody that works in the school.
The kids were passing out and vomiting from the heat?
They were vomiting and passing out in Hayden McFadden School. And I believe they also said someone posted it on Facebook.
Oh, then it's got to be true.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I can tell you, if that were happening, it would be reported to me, and I haven't heard anything along those lines.
Things just don't get reported.
No, they do. They do actually get reported. Believe me.
All right. And also, I remember 20 years ago, I went in Connie Academy. My niece was in a chorus. It was like towards the end of the school year, and they were putting on a little show for the families and friends and whatnot. 1 minute, and they had it like bleachers set up, like the smaller kids and the taller kids. She happened to be in the back. She was on the higher end. 1 minute she's there, the next minute she's gone. She passed right out. And I remember 20 years ago being in that school, how hot it was. She literally passed right out. Now this is 20 years ago, and nothing has been done since. And all
right, let me hold you there because you've been a while. I think we get your point. Let me let the mayor react.
So as I said before, I can't. I'm sorry about the experience your niece had, and we wouldn't want that to happen to any child. I can't speak to what the conditions were at that particular time 20 years ago. But what I can say is that these days, under not just our current superintendent but the previous superintendent, the school administration was very sensitive about the conditions in the classroom, the physical conditions, whether it was too hot or too cold, or whether there was any other threat to student safety or to their ability to pay attention and learn. And so they both monitor that very closely. And as I mentioned, the superintendent is going around the schools to judge for himself whether things are too hot. And I think he just and I have faith that he will, as an experienced educator, he will know it when he sees it.
All right, 508-996-0500. You're up next with the mayor. Good afternoon.
Somebody that works in the school.
Your phone is breaking up. Can you get in a better spot?
Vomiting and passing.
Hello.
And I believe.
All right, sorry about that.
It sounded like the delay of the.
Yeah. Delay of something. So just get to a better position and try calling us back, because he couldn't hear me anyway. So, I mean, what good was that? So, all right. So back to school, the heat and all of that kind of stuff. What about Buttonwood Pond? We had I know the paper.
Boy.
We had a discussion last week with the Ward 5 City Councilor, Scott Lima, who was in, and we talked about it. I know the paper ran something on it this morning as well. But Buttonwood Pond, I guess, has become a point of contention with the geese population there. And
it is. It's not just the pond. It's and it's not just Buttonwood Park, although I think that seems to be ground zero for the
there's
problem,
several, including the high school football field and baseball field over there too.
Yeah, and the field behind the high school,
call it Sergeant Field,
and Walsh Field.
Walsh Field, thank you.
Brooklawn. I was watching my youngest daughter's softball practice. When was it? Sunday night, I think. Whichever night it was, Sunday night, and at Brooklawn, and there was, I don't know how many geese there were, about 30 or 40 of them on the other side of the center field fence, and then all of a sudden they started
That's a fairly new problem for up there.
Yeah, well, there's lots of geese, and they apparently are not migrating because they're getting some good food here in Bedford.
Absolutely,
right?
they're being fed well.
But there were several dozen of them, and then all of a sudden they just took off. They're always, honking and carrying on and flying in any directions. And I looked, and it was someone just released their pit bull on them.
Wow!
They went everywhere. I said, "There's the answer." We need a few pit bulls. The reality is that it's hard to deal with it. You can't shoot them, right? So because for lots of reasons, not the least of which is that federal law prohibits it, right? So we can cook your goose if you want, Barry. That's a possibility.
Pre-Christmas geese, just come get one, right?
The Christmas goose.
Well, somebody called in the other day and suggested I guess other cities are using some type of a collie to chase them away?
That may be the best solution, although it's kind of hard to keep a dog in a particular place all day long.
Right.
That is a means that is used at airports for not just geese but other migratory birds. They have, dogs that go around and scatter the geese because geese or other birds flying into jet engines, right, for obvious reasons. So, we'll continue. Believe me, and I'll just say this to everybody: if you've got a good idea, let us know, because there isn't a silver bullet here, other than to continue to scare them away and put dogs out there. And it does get really messy. And, at some point, maybe we'll leave New Bedford and go somewhere else.
Where they're fed better. Well, I think that's half the problem right there. It's like the panhandlers. Maybe
that's what we do. If there's some way to communicate to them that the food is better and, fill in the blanks. Right?
They have a Sonic out in Somerset now. Try that.
Right.
And I hear their fries are pretty good. But a big part of it is the people, again, the public, feeding these things.
People just have to stop feeding them. It doesn't, I know that, there's like, a long-standing tradition of throwing bread to the birds over at Buttonwood Pond and some other places around the city, but it really doesn't help matters. And as far as the condition of the pond goes, I know Scott brought that up in his remarks. It's definitely something that we have to work on. It's just a really expensive problem. The pond needs to be dredged, and before it's dredged, the dam on which, Court Street or Fuller Parkway, whichever what you want to call it, the road in between, that there's a dam on which that road rests, and that has to be rebuilt. That's at least a couple of $1 million to do that. So it's an expensive proposition. It's in the capital plan to do that in the next few years, but it's not like, there's again an easy fix there. It's a little more complicated, as I've come to learn, than what made me meet the eye.
All right, let me grab another call. We got a whole bunch of them here waiting for you. 508-996-0500, and you are up next on WBSM. Good afternoon. Hello, you're on with the mayor. All right, you're next on WBSM. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hey.
Good afternoon, Barry. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor.
Hey, how are you?
Good. You mentioned the geese are up the north end now?
Well, at least I saw some in Brookline the other
night.
Yeah.
See, I live in the West End, and I took a walk early one morning around Buttonwood Park, and Councilor Lima was correct. I never saw so many geese in my life on the Brownell Avenue side.
Well, I'm not saying they're all in the North End. I don't know how to get rid of them.
I wish I had some ideas.
Yeah, I'm not saying they're all in the North End. They're all. They're all over the place.
No, I think it's a relatively new problem in the North End, because I've always lived around Brookline Park, and I don't recall seeing geese quite like we see them up there now.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, they're I know Council Lima. He's been doing his best over here, and I wish I had some ideas to get rid of. Buttonwood Park is like inundated with them. I don't know what. I wish I had some ideas. I'm going to have to do some research, maybe come up with some. I don't know. Thank you for your time.
Yeah,
appreciate
you.
Call.
Yeah, these are legitimate questions, and I wish I could just say, we have been working on it. We take it seriously. The whole problem lends itself to, some humor, but it isn't humorous if you live nearby or you're playing out in those fields or using the pond and you're seeing these things cover all over the place, and it is as bad as I can ever remember it. So we're trying different things. I would just ask everybody, just please don't feed them. That the reason they're here in New Bedford, and probably they're in New Bedford more than they are in other places, I suspect, not being a bird scientist, is that we are feeding them a lot.
All right, 508-996-0500. You're on the air with the mayor. Go ahead.
Barry and John, what a tag team.
Hey, how you doing, Dirty Deb?
How are you, lunch hour.
You got geese out there in Rochester?
Oh, not at my place, but...
How do you keep them away?
No food source.
Ah, okay.
Can you see if you can attract them? Do you have a good geese call you can use to send them out your way out to Rochester? There's more
room. Would your wife
and...
like that one? 90 degrees, 100 in the sun. Good dirty, John.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Dirty Deb. All right, I've got to take a break. 508-996-0500, and we will be back after this. All right, back in our little studio here with our remaining moments with Mayor Mitchell. We got about 7 minutes to go at the top of the hour. Any more progress with the wind situation here in the wind farm? I know there was a lot of concern about whether or not we were going to have the cooperation of the good folks that want to put to use our city and work with the fishing industry and all that. Any new developments there?
Yeah, there've been a lot. We haven't really talked. I'm glad you raised it. It'll probably take. Maybe we'll carry it on to the next show because it's worth talking about. But we've been doing a lot of work on it. I mean, that's the short answer. And there are two sets of goals here with wind, with the wind industry in New Bedford, and that is we're trying our best to make sure we're trying to do our best to get as much investment from that industry as possible, and investment that is substantial. And the term I've used is sticky. In other words, it's going to be here for a while. And that's on the one hand. So build up wind, but at the same time, do no harm to fishing, right? So, and it gets really complicated, but there are, on the wind investment side, we're working with Vineyard Wind, the awardee of the first contract for offshore wind generated electricity, and I expect in the next few months you'll start to see a lot more activity on their part, just sort of getting ready. More vessels coming and going on the waterfront and so forth, more announcements and such. So that's that, and we're trying to push the state to force them to make sure that they invest in New Bedford. So that's one set of issues. The other set of issues with the fishing industry concern not only to my mind, not only the way that it should work, offshore wind should work in the Massachusetts wind areas, but also what's going to happen in New York. So and because there are new wind areas opening up in New York right now that have direct implications to New Bedford. So I think we're making a lot of progress on the Massachusetts wind areas in the way that the windmills are aligned with one another. Some of the wind, at least one of the wind developers, for instance, originally proposed a wind farm in which the windmills wouldn't be broadly spaced and they wouldn't be in a grid alignment, so that it would make it very hard for fishing vessels to navigate. They've since backed away from that and have realigned their wind farm. That's Bay State Wind, which is essentially Ørsted, the big wind company in Denmark. So we had a good meeting with them this week. We're making some progress there. I think they've made some progress. The bigger issues, it seems to me, is with the wind farms, potential wind farms in New York. So New York is very aggressively moving into offshore wind, and they've designated these spaces for wind farms off of that are sort of shaped as triangles leading up to the Hudson River, up to New York City and the Hudson River. It turns out those areas are far more heavily fished than the Massachusetts areas, and most of that fish goes to New Bedford. Most of it's scallops. And so, just to give you and I know we're running out of time, but we should talk about this at some other point. From 2011 to 2016, there were $19 million worth of fish landed from the Massachusetts wind areas. From the proposed New York areas, there are $320 million worth of fish landed. 16 times as much.
So that could have a significant impact on our industry.
Most of that went to New Bedford.
Okay.
So a lot of people, including a lot of people in state government, don't realize that there are a lot of New Bedford fishermen, a lot of scallopers in particular, that fish over near New York and New Jersey, and a lot of the scallops they see coming in here are from there. And so, so we're working with folks in New Jersey, where some of the other scallops are landed, places like Cape May and Barnegat Light, New Jersey, which are smaller scallop ports than New Bedford, to try to cut back that area. We wrote the federal government, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, recently, and I'll send you a copy of the letter, arguing that those areas have to be cut back significantly because there's a lot of fish coming from there to New Bedford.
Boy, it'd be nice if we had a congressional delegation.
I knew you were going to say
huh?
that. Well, we're letting them know as well. We're educating them on the problem, but that's a challenge. It's going to be a big challenge, but we're up for that fight.
So ultimately, who makes the decision as to whether or not those things get cited?
The Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, which is part of the Department of the Interior.
Okay, so they've been duly notified of the impact this could have on the. I mean, could this really be a significant impact on the industry locally?
Yes.
To what degree? I mean, we're talking like hundreds of millions of dollars. It sounds like.
So I don't want to sound too alarmist about it because it's still pretty early in the process. But I can tell you that there is a lot of fish coming out of there, a lot of scallops, and we have to be very assertive in this process. And I am, believe me. With there was the first New York wind area, which is already leased out to a company called Stad Oil for offshore wind development. We sued. I mean, I think it's as you guys have reported, we sued the federal government to stop the leasing in that area because there were lots of scallops there, and so we're prosecuting that lawsuit.
So there is some precedent there. I mean,
yeah, no, I mean, I think it might end up in litigation, but we hope it doesn't.
All right. I was unaware that that was even going on.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about there.
We'll talk about it. We'll pick it up next week at this time. All right. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet, Barry.
All right. 508-996-0500 is our phone number. We're going to break for the news. We have ABC News, of course, the local news with JR coming up. And then, of course, the latest on that weather situation out there with the ABC6 Weather Center, folks. So stick around for that. And then we're back for a couple more hours. And Howie Carr right here. A shortened show because of the Red Sox starting early today. But you can switch over and listen to the rest of Howie on the app. We'll talk more about that coming up. Stay with us. You're listening to 1420 WBSM New Bedford.